After my miscarriage, I accidentally overheard Francis speaking to the doctor. Find an opportunity to drug my wife, and then remove her uterus, so that she can never have children again. Then he placed his large hand on another woman's stomach and instructed, make sure she gets the best treatment plan to preserve the pregnancy. I want her child to be the Liu family heir. The woman he was speaking to was someone I knew. She was a video host at Francis's company. He then sternly told the doctor, also, make sure my wife recovers well. If this surgery leaves her with any lasting damage, none of you will escape my wrath. My heart skipped a beat. I never expected the man who claimed to love me more than anything would betray me. I left him, signing the divorce papers, and made way for their love. Chapter 1. On the way back to my room, I was in a daze, my mind replaying the scene I had just witnessed. My husband, who treated me like his precious gem and loved me deeply, was secretly cheating on me with another woman and had arranged for my uterus to be removed. Yet, he knew that all I wanted was to have a child. A passing nurse gave me an envious look. Her husband booked an entire floor for her to rest and arranged for a professional nurse to take care of her needs. And that's not all. He insists on staying by her side 24/7. Her husband's love is practically overflowing. When she had her miscarriage and was bleeding, her husband's eyes were red from crying. I've never seen a man so devoted to his wife. I heard they met in college. And to marry her, he transferred the entire family business to her name. If this were before, hearing such words would have made me feel blessed. But now, my throat felt tight, as if a fly had lodged in it, making me sick to my stomach. Just then, I heard Francis's angry voice from the nearby room. A bunch of useless fools. If anything happens to Jasmine, I will kill every single one of you. Francis rarely got this angry. The last time was when I fell seriously ill, and after going to all the hospitals and finding no cure, he was so desperate that he nearly destroyed the hospital and even contemplated dying with me. I watched the veins bulging on his forehead, but I didn't feel the same emotional response I had back then. I spoke coldly, Francis, I'm here. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. He hurried over and wrapped me in his arms. Jasmine, where have you been? Why didn't you tell me? I thought something had happened to you. His voice trembled with a hint of fear, and I couldn't detect any false affection. I calmly pushed him away. It was too stuffy in the room. I just went out to get some fresh air. He let out a sigh of relief but still held onto my hand tightly. Then, he took a bowl of medicine from the nurse and gently brought it to my lips. Wife, it's time for your medicine. I looked at the dark brown liquid in the bowl, and a chill ran down my spine. The image of what I had just witnessed filled my mind. This medicine is bitter. I don't want to drink it. In the past, Francis would never have refused my request. But now, he stubbornly insisted. You won't get better without taking the medicine, and you won't be able to have a baby. Didn't you always want to give me a child? He knew how much I longed for a baby, and he was sure that using it as bait would make me comply. But I no longer trusted him. I pushed the bowl of medicine away. I said I don't want to drink it. Francis's gentle expression stiffened, and I saw a flicker of displeasure in his eyes. I thought I had avoided the worst by pushing away the medicine. But the next second, everything went black, and I lost consciousness. When I woke up again, it was the next morning. A sense of foreboding surged in my chest. I lifted the blanket and looked at my stomach. There was indeed a surgical scar. My world felt like it had collapsed. I wanted to confront Francis, but he was already explaining. Sweetheart, you suddenly fainted last night. After the doctor checked, he found that your uterus had cancer, so I had them remove it. To make sure I believed him, he even showed me the test report, which indeed said my uterus had cancer. If I hadn't seen him order the doctor to do this, I might have been tricked. Looking at the grotesque scar on my abdomen, it felt like my heart was being violently torn in two, leaving nothing but infinite despair. Francis gently pulled me into his arms and comforted me. Sweetheart, I know you've always wanted a child, but your health is the most important thing. I don't want anything to happen to you. If necessary, we can adopt a child in the future. Chapter 2. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, the door was pushed open and Zara walked in, carrying a fruit basket. Excuse me for interrupting. I'm here to visit Mrs. Liu on behalf of the company. Zara was a new host for Lou Entertainment. She was stunningly beautiful, with a perfect figure, and her personality was equally charming. Every one of her live broadcasts made Lou Entertainment millions. No wonder Francis liked her. Francis didn't change his expression. He simply nodded at Zara as a greeting and then returned his gaze to me. But I knew. Beneath the calm surface, there was a storm brewing. I turned my back to them and lay down, suppressing my emotions. I'm tired. I need to rest. I thought Zara would leave, but instead, she stayed, sitting beside Francis and keeping him company while he stayed by my side. Francis sat on the edge of the bed, gently massaging my shoulders. Zara, sitting beside him, appeared to be the picture of harmony, an image of a loving couple. But what neither of them knew was that under the bed, hidden from view, Zara was intentionally brushing her legs against Francis's. At first, Francis didn't stop her. He allowed it until she became more brazen, then grabbed her leg and stopped her provocations. But Zara didn't give up. She hugged Francis from behind, rubbing against him like a cat. Francis instinctively glanced at me, confirming that my eyes were closed and my breathing even. I had fallen asleep. That gave him the courage to turn and press Zara against the nearby table, kissing her forcefully, his hand on her neck. But he quickly pulled away, his cold gaze seeming to warn her to behave. However, Zara wasn't afraid. She wrapped herself around him again. Francis couldn't hold back any longer. After giving me one last glance, he took Zara by the hand and walked out of the room. As soon as the door closed, I opened my eyes. Francis would never know that every interaction he just had with Zara had been reflected in the glass, and I had seen everything clearly. I followed them as they turned a corner. I hid behind a pillar, slightly peeking out, and saw the scene unfold before me. Francis had Zara by the neck, his teeth clenched in anger. Didn't I warn you to behave when Jasmine is around? Zara was unafraid, playfully rubbing against his arm. Well, these past few days you've been busy with her. The baby misses you, she said with a flirtatious smile. Then, with a sultry look, she hooked her arm around his neck and coquettishly said, Mr. Lou, you've always wanted to try this outside, right? Let's give it a shot. There are no cameras on this floor, and your wife is asleep. No one will know. Before Francis could respond, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. Francis froze for a moment, then immediately cupped the back of Zara's head and deepened the kiss. Francis, be gentle. I'm afraid the baby won't be able to handle it. Zara whispered. Shut up. I know my limits. I couldn't bear to watch what happened next, so I fled. As I ran, the sounds of their intimacy filled my ears. My heart felt as if it had been torn in two. A sharp, piercing pain. The man who swore he only loved me, the one who promised to cherish me above all others, was secretly meeting with another woman behind my back. It was as though an invisible hand had slapped me across the face, the intense shame almost suffocating me. My legs went weak, and I collapsed to the ground, in a pathetic, humiliating heap. Chapter 3. A nurse passing by saw me collapse and quickly rushed over to help. When she noticed the tears on my face, she mistakenly thought I had hurt myself and immediately comforted me. Don't cry, Mrs. Lou. If Mr. Lou sees you like this, he'll be heartbroken. Seeing the nurse's worried expressions, I couldn't hold my emotions any longer and began to cry uncontrollably. After crying for a long while, I finally exhausted myself and went back to my room to sleep. When I woke up, Francis still wasn't back, but I found Zara standing at the foot of my bed. Her face darkened. She looked at me with utter disdain, sneering. You saw what happened, didn't you? Francis loves me. I'm pregnant with his child. My fists clenched, trembling as I asked her, how long have you two been together? Zara smirked and raised 3 fingers, proudly saying, 3 years. 3 years ago, he met me at a dinner, and he fell for me at first sight. On the very first night, he kept me in bed all night. After that, he felt guilty for you, so he transferred all his assets to your name. But those things were meant for me and the child. You stole them from us. I bit my lip so hard that it almost bled, trying to suppress the urge to slap her. Zara, seeing my reaction, grew more arrogant. She continued, do you really think he loves you? Every night after you fall asleep, He comes to find me, even now, pregnant. He doesn't stop. To be honest, on the night you miscarried, he wasn't at a business meeting, he was in my bed. With me, now. He can't live without me. If you're smart, you'll just divorce him. Hearing that, I remembered that night. The pain was so unbearable that I passed out multiple times. In the end, I almost died from blood loss. The doctor called Francis 10 times and he never answered. And eventually, his phone was turned off. The next day, when he returned, he kneeled beside my bed and apologized, saying he had been at a business meeting and was terribly sorry for not being able to come to see me sooner. He slapped himself repeatedly in self-punishment. But in reality, while I was gasping for air, he was in bed with another woman. At that moment, the last shred of hope in me died. My heart felt like a hollow shell, lifeless. Zara, seeing my defeated expression, became even more pleased with herself. She stood with her hands on her hips and said, "Tomorrow, Francis is throwing me a wedding. It will be grander than the one he had with you. Make sure you come to our celebration." With that, she strutted out of the room, her chin held high, as though she had just won a victory. Watching her leave, a sharp pain shot through my chest. The next second, everything went black, and I fainted. When I regained consciousness, it was already the next morning. As I opened my eyes, I saw Francis sitting beside me, his eyes red and swollen. He immediately pulled me into his arms, his voice thick with emotion. "Jasmine, you're awake. You scared me to death." The image of what I had seen in the utility room flashed in my mind, and I felt disgusted. I pushed Francis away. "I'm fine." Francis was stunned for a moment, and I saw a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. I looked into his tear-filled eyes and, with great effort, asked the question that had been weighing on my mind these past few days. "Do you remember what I said to you before we got married?" Before we married, I had told him that if he ever fell in love with someone else, he should tell me. I would step aside for her. But if he lied to me, I would disappear from his world forever. Without hesitation, Francis nodded. "Why are you asking about this all of a sudden? Did I do something to upset you?" After saying that, his expression became serious, and he stood up, giving orders to the nurse behind him. "Bring every woman who has had contact with me recently into the room." Soon, my room was filled with over a dozen women, including nurses and a few female housemaids. Zara was among them. She rubbed her belly and looked at me with a smug, triumphant gaze. Francis, his hands behind his back, commanded sternly, "Tell my wife how you've been in contact with me. The more detailed, the better." "Madam, the last time I had contact with the young master was when I handed over the recent meal plan." "Madam, I was sent by the young master to bring calming incense to the hospital." "Madam, I came to replace your 4-drip after Mr. Liu noticed it was about to run out." Each woman reported her interactions with Francis, most of which were related to me, and they couldn't hide the envy in their eyes. When it was Zara's turn, she casually said, "After I delivered the fruit basket yesterday, I haven't had any contact with Mr. Liu." "Don't worry, madam. Mr. Liu only has you in his heart." Chapter 4. It was supposed to be a compliment, but I could only hear the full sarcasm in her words. I gave a self-deprecating smile and gestured for them to leave. After proving his innocence, Francis seemed more at ease. He sat down on the bed and took my hand, speaking earnestly. "Jasmine, you know I love only you in this life. I will never be interested in any other woman but you." I responded with a simple, indifferent ignoring the disappointment in Francis' eyes as I pulled my hand away. Then, as if remembering something, Francis added, "Jasmine, I have to go on a business trip tomorrow, so I won't be able to stay with you, but my phone will be on 24/7. If you miss me, just call me." He spoke with such deep emotion that I couldn't detect any insincerity. I suppressed the discomfort rising in me and nodded in response. "Be careful on the road." I caught the brief flash of guilt in his eyes before hearing his slightly aggrieved voice. "But I really don't want to leave you, even though I'm only going for a day. I don't want to be apart from you for a single minute. When we adopt a child, I'll just hand over the company to him, so I don't have to keep running around, and we won't have to be apart." If I didn't know that he was actually going to marry Zara in the next 7 days, I might have been moved by his words. Finally, with a reluctant kiss on my forehead, Francis left the room. As soon as he was gone, I left the hospital. After packing up my things at home, I placed a divorce agreement on the coffee table and boarded a flight to Switzerland. Before getting on the plane, I deleted and blocked all of Francis' contact details, saying a final goodbye to him. Sitting on the plane, I watched as the city where I had lived for over 30 years shrank smaller and smaller through the window. The heavy stone in my heart finally lifted. Francis, I'll never see you again. The next morning, I arrived safely in Switzerland. After researching online, I chose a cozy guest house to stay in. Meanwhile, Francis was in the midst of his wedding with Zara. Just before he stepped into the church, he remembered to ask the doctor about my condition. The doctor told him that since he had left, I had been sleeping and advised not to disturb me. They would let him know when I woke up. Once he heard this, he finally felt at ease and entered the church. But for some reason, his mind was still occupied with thoughts of me. Last night, he even dreamed that I was asking for a divorce, which had startled him awake. He immediately called the doctor to confirm that I was still asleep. Only then did he manage to calm down. However, that unease remained in his heart, growing stronger as time passed. His thoughts drifted farther away, and even when the officiant asked if he took Zara to be his wife, he didn't hear it. It wasn't until Zara shook his hand that he snapped out of it. He looked into her eyes, full of love, but all he could think of was my face, full of disappointment. He was jolted. He pulled his hand away from hers and ran out of the church. Mr. Liu, the wedding isn't over yet. Where are you going? It was only then that he realized how important I was to him. How could he marry another woman behind my back? Jasmine, you must wait for me. Panicked, Francis rushed back to the hospital. After getting out of the car, he hurried to my room. Only when he saw me lying on the bed, still covered by the blanket, did his heart finally settle a little. He opened the door and walked in with a gentle smile on his face. Darling, I'm back. But there was no response from the bed. Francis carefully lifted the blanket, and his smile froze the moment he saw not me, but a pillow underneath. Where was Jasmine? Chapter 5. Francis' heart raced with panic. He hurriedly searched the room, calling out my name. Jasmine, Jasmine, where are you? Jasmine. But there was no trace of me in the room. In his desperation, he grabbed his phone to call me. However, it showed that I had blocked him. He quickly tried to send a message, only to find that all my contact information had been deleted and blocked. The dream from last night surged back into his mind, and his face turned pale. He immediately called for the doctor. The doctor explained that they didn't know what happened either. After I had asked not to be disturbed while I was sleeping, they had not entered the room. It wasn't until the security footage was reviewed that they discovered I had quietly left the hospital less than an hour after Francis had departed. Francis panicked. He called the police and rushed home. When he arrived, he hurriedly ran into the house and grabbed a servant, demanding, "Where is she? Has she come back?" "Madam, she did return yesterday, but she left again shortly after, saying she was just picking up something before going back to the hospital." The servant stuttered in fear. Just as Francis was about to speak, his eyes landed on the divorce agreement on the coffee table. He released the servant and walked over, trembling as he picked up the document. When he saw my name on the last page, he froze, as though his soul had been sucked out of him. How could this be? His Jasmine couldn't possibly want a divorce. There must be some kind of misunderstanding. In a fit of rage, Francis tore the agreement in half, sending the pieces scattering in the air. "Go. Gather everyone. We must find my wife. Now," he ordered the servant sharply before rushing out of the living room. No matter where his Jasmine had gone, he would bring her back. Chapter 6. The guest house I chose was near the sea. Each morning, I could open the curtains and see the view. The deep blue sea stretched endlessly, with seagulls soaring above and diving to catch their prey. The scenery was breathtaking. Since I was young, I have always loved the sea. But due to my family's poverty, I never had the chance to see it. My father, an avid gambler, had accumulated huge debts and was an alcoholic. Whenever he got drunk, he would beat my mother more than once. If I hadn't intervened and called the police, my mother's life would have been lost. But luck doesn't always come. One day after a study session, I came home to find my mother lying on the floor, barely alive, surrounded by blood, and my father had disappeared. I called the police and had my father arrested, but he seemed to vanish from this world entirely, never to return. The pain from my broken family remained with me, etched into my soul for the next 10 years. It tormented me in the dead of night. I hated myself for not being able to protect my mother, for not being able to take her away and shield her. I also hated my mother for loving my father so much that she stayed with him, even though he mistreated her, until her death. These experiences made me afraid to trust love. I refused to get close to anyone, until Francis came into my life and changed everything. Back then, when Francis had taken over the Lou Corporation, he fell in love with me at first sight. He pursued me for 5 years. He always appeared when I faced difficulties, helping me, providing for all my material needs, and occasionally surprising me with thoughtful gifts. Every birthday, he would celebrate with me, always presenting me with the most beautiful jewelry in the city. As long as I liked even one piece, he would be overjoyed, as if he had been rewarded by the emperor. Knowing that I loved the sea, he would take me to the beach once a month, a tradition he continued even after we got married. Later, I didn't want to hold him back from his work, so after some persuasion, he jokingly gave up on that rule. Francis's arrival had been like a ray of light in my dark life, giving me a reason to live, showing me the meaning of life. But he also gave me the greatest blow, showing me how complex human nature is. Even when you love someone to the core, you can't prevent them from betraying you. In fact, in order to make sure another woman's child could inherit his fortune, he heartlessly had my uterus removed. That afternoon, I went to the hospital for an examination. My uterus was indeed gone, although I had known the truth for a long time. Seeing the results still made my heart twist with pain. On the first day we got married, I told him that I loved children and wanted to have our own. At that time, Francis had smiled indulgently, holding me and saying he had always wanted a baby with me but had refrained from bringing it up because he was worried I wouldn't like it. But fate played its cruel game. I had difficulty getting pregnant. No matter how hard we tried, no matter how much we took care of my health, we couldn't conceive for 4 years after marriage. I felt terribly guilty and often cried late into the night. Francis would hold me and comfort me, sincerely telling me that it didn't matter whether we had a child. All that mattered was that I was happy and by his side. His tone was light, as if he truly didn't care, but I still saw the disappointment in his eyes. He actually wanted a child more than I did. However, after our persistent efforts, we finally conceived our first child in June of this year. When I found out I was pregnant, it felt like fireworks exploded in my world. I was overjoyed. I couldn't wait to share the news with Francis, but he wasn't as happy as I had imagined. In fact, he seemed somewhat sorrowful. At that time, I didn't understand. I thought something had gone wrong with his work, which was why he was upset. But now, I realize he was afraid that my child would take the inheritance rights from Zara's child. Then, I had a miscarriage. The child I had looked forward to was gone. During that time, I fainted several times from crying. But Francis, on the other hand, seemed relieved. Looking back now, he was probably praying for my child to be lost. Suddenly, I felt a strange sense of relief. I was glad the child hadn't been born, because otherwise, he would have grown up in a home without a father's love. I couldn't imagine how painful that would have been. Chapter 7. The scenery in Switzerland was beautiful, and I decided to settle here. After arranging for a residence permit, I bought a small villa nearby. Though it wasn't large, it was cozy and warm, and even living alone, I never felt lonely. In the following days, my life became peaceful yet fulfilling. To make the house livelier, I adopted a cat and a dog. The cat loved drinking my foot soak water, so I named it Foot Soak. The dog enjoyed picking up little stones and carrying them in its mouth, so it was called Little Stone. With their companionship, my originally calm life became lively, just because they were so mischievous and often got me into trouble. But what I didn't expect was that Francis would find me here. On that day, I had just signed up for a tour group to go skiing in the Swiss Alps. However, just as I was about to leave, Francis appeared out of nowhere and blocked my way. "Jasmine, You're really here. At first, I didn't recognize him. After a month apart, he had lost so much weight, and his face looked excessively haggard. He seemed like a completely different person compared to the confident and cold CEO I once knew. When he saw me, his dull eyes lit up, and he quickly walked over, trying to hug me. I stepped back, dodging him. I took a few steps back, keeping my distance, and looked at him warily, saying, "Don't come any closer." Francis paused, a flash of hurt in his eyes. "Jasmine, what did I do wrong? Why are you treating me like this? I was only away on a business trip for a day, and you quietly disappeared from my life, leaving me a divorce agreement. Did you stop loving me?" His voice was filled with sadness, as if he had suffered a great injustice. It seemed like he still didn't know that I had already discovered his affair with Zara. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of what Zara had said in the hospital room that day. "Did you think he loves you? Actually, every night after you fall asleep, he comes to find me, even when I'm pregnant. He doesn't rest." To be honest, the day you miscarried, he didn't go to any social event. He was with me in my bed. Now, he can't live without me. If you're smart, you should just divorce him. Tomorrow, Francis will hold a wedding for me, more grand than the one he gave you. Remember to come and have a taste of our wedding feast. Francis's face turned pale in an instant. He stared at me in disbelief. She told you everything?" I put my phone away, calmly saying, "Now you know why I left you? As a courtesy for the years we spent together, I won't pursue this matter any further, but I hope you'll respect my wishes and stop disturbing my life." After finishing, I turned to leave, but Francis grabbed my hand, shaking his head. "Jasmine, listen to me. I didn't marry her. You're my only wife." His so-called explanation sounded like a joke, and I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "We're already divorced. Who you marry is your business. There's no need to explain. Just hurry back and take care of Zara. Her child is probably waiting for you." Francis shook his head again, trying to explain. "We haven't divorced. I didn't sign the divorce agreement. You're still my wife. I can explain the situation with Zara. It was just a passing fancy. But I promise you, I've always loved you, and that love has never diminished. You know, with my status, many women want to be with me. At first, I could firmly reject them, but I'm still human. I couldn't control my attraction. So, each word that came out of Francis's mouth felt like a sharp arrow piercing my heart, mocking everything I had invested in this relationship. I couldn't take it anymore. I slapped him hard across the face. "This is not an excuse for your infidelity. I told you before, if you fell in love with someone else, or had an affair, you should tell me. But you've been entangled with her for 3 years. In these 3 years, you had many chances to come clean, but you didn't. You chose to hide it, and even had my uterus removed so I couldn't get pregnant and make room for her child." The anger that had been building up in my heart exploded at that moment. My voice unconsciously rose. Francis froze, unsure of how to respond, but he didn't have the chance to say anything, as the tour group had already arrived at my doorstep, calling for me to hurry up and get on the bus. I didn't want to waste any more time with Francis. I sidestepped him and got into the car. Through the car window, I saw Francis standing there, dazed, as if he had lost his soul. But since his back was to me, I couldn't see his expression, and honestly, I didn't want to. Chapter 8. Our tour guide was a very young man named Phineas, a mixed-race Chinese-American who was quite handsome. Most of the women in the group were clearly drawn to his good looks. However, he had a somewhat aloof demeanor. He only answered questions related to the tour and didn't respond to anything else. Before we began the hike up the snow mountain, he checked everyone's safety gear, ensuring there were no issues. When it was my turn, he gave me a long, meaningful look. His gaze was strange, as if we had met before, but he didn't say anything. After confirming that I was properly secured, he led us on our way. When I was with Francis, he never allowed me to engage in any thrilling activities because he worried that my body couldn't handle it. What he didn't know was that I had always been someone who loved excitement. The more thrilling and heart-pounding the outdoor activities, the more I enjoyed them. But I didn't want him to worry. So after we married, I stopped doing these activities. Before that, My favorite sport had always been skiing. For years, I hadn't been able to go skiing, and every time I saw someone skiing on TV, I'd feel a longing in my heart. I never thought I'd have the chance to ski again, but when I stepped back onto the skis and started gliding on the snow, I felt like my soul had been set free. It was the most exhilarating and refreshing feeling. However, just as I was nearing the finish line, a reckless skier suddenly veered into my path. He couldn't stop his skis in time and collided with me. The impact knocked me off my feet, and the force sent me tumbling uncontrollably down the slope until I crashed heavily at the bottom, causing me to cry out in pain. My mouth was filled with snow. The others rushed to my side to check on me, with Phineas leading the way. He quickly lifted me in his arms and carried me to a nearby cabin. "Are you all right?" he asked, his clear eyes filled with concern. I rubbed my sore back and shook my head. "I'm fine. Just a little pain in my back. It should get better in a while." But he frowned. "No, that's not enough. I'm taking you to the hospital for a checkup. Some internal injuries can't be detected right away." Ignoring my protests, he insisted on taking me to the hospital. After an X-ray showed no serious injuries, he finally relaxed with a sigh of relief. I looked at his tense expression and genuinely thanked him. "Thank you so much, Mr. Phineas. Taking care of you is my job," he replied without changing his expression. Giving a slight nod. "It's almost 6 o'clock. Let me take you back to rest." Under his guidance, I returned to the accommodation. After a simple meal, I went to bed and quickly fell asleep. Chapter 9. The incident that happened that day seemed to have made Phineas more cautious. Over the next few days, he kept a close eye on our every move, clearly afraid that another accident might occur. By the time the tour ended, there had been no further incidents. As we were saying our goodbyes, Phineas suddenly called out to me, "If you ever want to join a tour again, just let me know. I can give you a discount." I hadn't expected Phineas, who appeared aloof and distant, to proactively add people on WeChat for the sake of money. I nodded and scanned his WeChat QR code. After that, I was about to leave when he stopped me again. "Do you have time this weekend? I'd like to invite you to dinner." I was surprised by the invitation. I hadn't expected Phineas to ask me out to eat. I almost declined, but when I saw Francis walking toward us from a distance, I changed my mind. "All right, send me the address, and I'll come find you." A hint of excitement flashed in Phineas' eyes. He nodded eagerly before leaving. No sooner had Phineas left than Francis blocked my way. "Who was that man? Why did you agree to have dinner with him?" I thought that after what happened, Francis would have left, but he had been waiting around all this time, just waiting for me to come back. Seeing me talking to Phineas, he immediately became possessive and rushed over to question me. I furrowed my brow and replied coldly, "It's none of your business." "How is it none of my business? We're not divorced yet. I won't allow you to be with another man." Francis raised his voice for the first time, glaring at me with bloodshot eyes, as if he might devour me at any moment. I was startled by his sudden aggression and instinctively took a step back. Realizing his outburst, Francis quickly tried to calm down, his tone softening. "Sorry, I was too emotional just now, but I really can't accept you being with another man." With that, he handed me a report, explaining earnestly, "This is the diagnosis from the highest authority. Your uterus really did develop cancer. I wasn't lying to you. The surgery was because of the cancer. And as for Zara's baby, I only wanted her to have it to make up for the fact that you can't have children." I glanced at the report. It was indeed stamped by an authoritative organization, and no one could falsify it. The result was unexpected. I hadn't thought that my uterus had really developed cancer, and it seemed Francis hadn't lied to me after all. "Jasmine, you're the love of my life. I would never hurt you." Francis continued to profess his feelings. "As for Zara, that was just a mistake. I've cut ties with her, and I won't let her interfere with our life anymore. Come back, please. I really can't live without you." As he said this, he reached for my hand, but I quickly pulled away and distanced myself from him. "You must have heard the saying, once betrayed, never forgiven. Since you betrayed me, I will never forgive you. Whether you sign the divorce papers or not is up to you, but I don't want you to bother me anymore." Francis, seemingly not understanding my words, shook his head. No, I don't want to divorce. We've been together for so many years. Don't you cherish the beautiful memories we've had? You once said that you'd love only me for the rest of your life. Why are you willing to leave me? Looking at Francis, I felt nothing but indifference in my heart. I immediately called the police and had him taken away. Then, I sent a message to Zara, telling her to keep an eye on Francis. After that, he didn't show up again. During this time, Phineas kept making subtle attempts to meet with me, though he was discreet. I could tell what he meant. I directly told him that I had just come out of a relationship that had lasted over 10 years and wasn't looking to start a new one. Phineas, however, wasn't discouraged. He said he was willing to wait because he had already been waiting for 10 years. That's when I found out that Phineas and I had met before, back when I had just started working and earned some money. I signed up for skiing lessons. It was during that time that I met Phineas. He had come to the ski resort to unwind because of his heavy family responsibilities. But he had fallen and injured his leg. The place where he fell was poorly monitored, and no one noticed he was in trouble. I happened to see him and quickly called for help, which led to his rescue. After that, we lost touch. He said he had been looking for me to thank me in person, but I seemed to have disappeared, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find me. It wasn't until I married Francis that he saw me on the big screen, but he didn't want to disturb my life. Hearing his story, I was surprised to learn how much we had crossed paths. Phineas didn't distance himself after being rejected. Instead, we became friends. He often accompanied me to outdoor activities, warming my heart, and became an important part of my life. It wasn't until 2 years later that I heard news of Francis again. I heard that after he was arrested by the police, Zara personally bailed him out. Afterward, the two had a huge argument. In a fit of rage, Francis pushed Zara, causing her to lose the baby. Unable to bear the loss of both Love and her child, Zara went mad and ran over Francis with her car, leaving him in a vegetative state. Zara was then sent to a mental hospital, where she spent the rest of her life. Hearing about their fates didn't stir any emotions in me. To me, these people were just fleeting figures in my life, leaving marks but never staying.